Hi. So in this video we are going to study how to write an essay on the development of phase, which is a main question in embryology. So first we have to give an introduction, then we have to write about the paired and unpaired processes in the development of phase, then we have to give a symbol diagram, then about the 5 primordia, then we can give a small flow chart which is easy to analyze for the examiners and which includes all the important points which is needed, which should be included in the development of phase. Then we have to write 4 examples of the clinical correlation. So when we start, we have to write first. Phase is formed from the structures that lie around the stomatodeum, that is the future mouth, and we have to write what the future mouth is bounded cranially and caudally. So what it is bounded cranially, and then it is bounded caudally. Cranially by a bulging produced due to the developing brain, and caudally by pericardial bulge. Then we have to write about the unpaired processes, that is frontonasal process, which is above. Here in this diagram we can see this is a frontonasal process, and we have to write about the paired process, that is first pharyngeal arch, or which is also called the mandibular arch, which is present on each side. Here we can see the mandibular arch. Then each arch divides into maxillary process and mandibular process. We can see this mandibular arch in the second diagram. In this diagram we can see that it divides into maxillary process and mandibular process. Then we have to write about the 5 primordia for development of phase, that is one is paired. So two are paired and one is unpaired. So unpaired frontonasal process and paired maxillary process and mandibular process. Then we have to draw these 2 diagrams also, which shows the development. Then we have to come to the flowchart. So this flowchart plays a main role in writing the answer. So first we have to write from the frontonasal process, that is a surface ectoderm thickens to form an ectodermal elevation, which is called the olfactory placodes. Then this olfactory placodes invaginate into the underlying mesoderm to form olfactory pits or nasal pits, which are continuous with stomatodeum below. Then the mesenchyme around the margins of nasal pit proliferate to form horseshoe shaped elevation. You can see in this diagram. Then we have to write about the elevation. So first was olfactory placodes, then olfactory pits or nasal pits, then horseshoe shaped elevation. Then in this elevation has 2 halves, that is medial half and lateral half. The medial half of this elevation is called medial nasal process, and the lateral half is called lateral nasal process. Then the medial nasal process extend towards the stomatodeum, that is a future mouth, and form 2 globular process which fuse to form what intermaxillary segments. And this intermaxillary segment, it has 3 components. Then we have to write about the 3 components, that is a labial component, upper jaw component, and palatal component. The labial component is a philtrum of upper lip, and lower and upper jaw component is alveolar process of upper jaw, and palatal component forms the palate. Then medial nasal process also form dorsum of nose. We have to write. So medial nasal process and lateral nasal process, what it becomes. So the medial nasal process, it forms the dorsum of nose, primitive nasal septum, crest and tip of nose, while lateral nasal process forms the sides and alae of nose. In human face we can imagine the nose. The medial nasal process forms the dorsum of nose, and primitive nasal septum the middle part, medially the middle part, then crest and tip of nose. Then in lateral nasal septum, it forms laterally the sides and ala of nose. Then 2 maxillary process forms the lateral part of upper lip and upper part of cheek. Then we have to write about the 2 mandibular process which form the lower lip and lower part of cheek. 2 mandibular process. We said about the medial nasal process, lateral nasal process, and the 2 maxillary process Now we are going to say about the two mandibular process, which form the lower lip and the lower part of cheek. Then the surface opening of stomatodium forms the oral fissure. The lateral angles of the fissure are formed by fusion of maxillary and mandibular process. Then we have to write about the clinical correlation, that is cleft lip, which is important, really important. Again, 2 or 3 more questions separately can be asked as cleft lip. Then again we can write about microstomia and macrostomia more. So these notes are enough to be written during development of phase essay question. Then these notes are prepared from IBC. Then from the embryology textbook of Vishram. Then these are enough actually, but more note on clinical correlation you can refer to IB Singh or Vishram Singh textbook of embryology. Thank you.